You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Welcome back to Proof Text. I'm Dr. Mario, and this is a segment that we call What's in the Name. We've been walking through pertinent Pentateuch names in recent, and one of the names that we had discussed not too long ago was Isaac, and then we, before that, had talked about his brother Ishmael. And now let's go on and let's really delve into the idea of Jacob. So we've gone through Abraham, Isaac, and now the third of the major patriarchs is Jacob. Jacob's name, and we're going to look at his etymology, the poignancy, as well as the application for us as believers. Etymology. Jacob's name is actually, he has two different names. If you know the Bible story, Jacob has his name given to him by his parents, and then the second name that he has is Israel, which is given to him by the Lord. Now, whenever we consider the etymology and the poignancy and the application of some of these names, it requires us to understand both of the names. Now, Jacob is usurper, or one who grabs the heel, or something along those lines, as because the reality of it is that Jacob was the younger of two brothers coming out of the womb, and he was wrestling with his brother Esau in order to get out of the womb first. And of course, Jacob somehow or another bamboozles his father and ends up getting the blessing. But that's a whole nother story there, because Jacob's name doesn't stay his name forever. Jacob is one that is wrestling, and he bamboozles his father in order to get the blessing. And as a result, it's really not a good thing for Jacob to be known as Jacob, because he is the betrayer, the heel hooker, the one that's going after these blessings in and of himself. By contrast, Jacob does what he normally does of wrestling with somebody, and Jacob ends up wrestling with the angel of the Lord and says, I won't let you go, and you won't let me go until you bless me. And as a result of this blessing, Jacob is given a new name, which is Israel, which means to wrestle with the Lord, or to wrestle with God. Now, one of the fun things whenever we consider the etymology of Israel is that his name and the sense of Israel, the wrestling with El, God, that name exists for a long time before Israel, in some of the Canaanite lingo, in some of the Akkadian lingo, etc. like that. So the idea of one wrestling with God is a pre-existing idea, because, most of us, as you'll see in the application, wrestle with God likewise. Now, within the pertinency and the great thing of it, of course, as we said, it's ironic that his name is one that wrestles, or the usurper, or the one that follows after, in regards to Jacob being the one wrestling with Esau. But then he gives that up, and he ends up wrestling with God because he still continually wants to have the blessing. So on one hand, he wrestled with his sibling, he bamboozles his father and gets blessed, and then later on in his life, he wrestles with God, or the angel of the Lord, and ends up getting blessed in that way as well. And blessings often come with name changes, and we should not forget that. Now, if we take his name and consider the poignancy beyond his story and into the rest of Israel's history, is this not exactly what happens with the children of Israel? And I'm meaning like the whenever they're enslaved in Egypt, or the 12 tribes, or even them over off in Assyrian, Babylonian, and Persian exile, they continually wrestle with God. Some of them wrestle with God in a righteous, desiring way. They're wrestling to know his word. They're wrestling to pursue after him. They're wrestling to not lose the Lord, if we want to word it as such. But then there's others that wrestle with God in a not good way. They don't want to obey the Lord. What comes to my mind is of Jonah, right? They don't want to go and sacrifice and worship correctly. I'm thinking now of, say, Jeroboam in the northern 10 tribes. There's this constant wrestling with God. Now, again, as I said, whenever we go to the application, the reality of it is that we don't need to be thinking necessarily about who is a Jew as we go to, say, Book of Romans and that whole discussion there. What we need to be thinking about is who is an Israel. Who is wrestling with God now? Now, again, The wrestling with God that yielded Jacob's name changing was the wrestling for a blessing, not the wrestling to escape. If we want to be the children of Israel, the people of God, as it were, then we need to wrestle with God not to escape and to disobey, such as Jeroboam and Jonah and Nate mentioned earlier, but rather as someone that wrestles with the Lord so that we might be blessed. I rather like to think that when we read scripture, we are wrestling with the text. We are wrestling with God in the text. And we are trying to grasp Him. We're trying to understand Him. That's the pursuit of theology proper, is to wrestle with the Lord and to know Him better and be blessed from knowing Him better. We see this throughout all of Israel, that those that wrestle with God are the ones that ultimately are blessed. Likewise, when we go to the New Testament, if we were to go, say, for instance, to Revelation and talking about the return of the tribes, depending upon your view of that, regardless if it's the 12 tribes, ethnically speaking, or if it's 12 tribes, spiritually speaking, it is those that wrestle with God and hold out messianic hope that are a part of the people of God when the Messiah comes to reign ultimately forever here on earth. And so the name begins out Yaakov, Jacob, one that is the usurper. And again, that's not a good thing. So it's a good thing that Jacob's name changes to Israel, but now it's also the reality that he's wrestling with God. So the poignancy and the application that I want to posit to you in regards to reading the story of Israel is, are you wrestling with God because you're disobeying God, or are you wrestling with God because you want to be blessed by God? This is how we should read the story of Jacob and Israel. This is how it matters in our lives. I hope this helps you understand any instance where the name Israel is mentioned so that you might be blessed likewise as we go into our text of Scripture. Continue wrestling, deal with the name of the Lord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.